And we are live. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm here we're here for the fall 2022 TinySeed application information session, where we are going to answer a ton of audience questions. We have some questions that have already come into our support inbox and questions from MicroConf Connect Slack. We have some questions from social media. So it's great to have you here as we wait for other folks to join us, because we expect a pretty full crowd today. I'm going to bring in my other panelists. The program director of TinySeed is Tracy Osborne. She is joining us from somewhere on the road in Canada. Tracy, welcome.
Hello. Yes, I'm in Nelson, Canada right now. And it's a very dark and thunderstormy day, which is why I look very dramatic right now.
Nice lighting. I'm digging this.
Right.
All right. And for coming to us live from Lisbon, Portugal, Mr. Alex McQuaid, the program manager for our EMEA batch program. Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Alex McQuaid.
Yes. Hello, Ola from Lisbon. Not as dramatic of lighting, but it's always sunny here.
I was going to say, but your background is on point.
Feels like a fake background.
I queued you for that, so I appreciate that.
Can you prove it's real by touching the plant behind you?
Just ruin the virtual.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he hits a screen. Well, it's good to have you both here. I know folks are excited to get going. I'm pretty stoked. My wife this morning asked me, which batch numbers are these? And I was like, I think it's 6 and 7, but I might be 7 and 8. We lost count because we are doing 2 a year. And we are, getting a lot of, is it 6?
I'm doing that really quickly, but I'm not actually sure.
Yep.
No,
so
that's right. Yeah.
We're excited.
I like getting to this level. It's like great. For a while, it was really easy to know where we're on. And it's been, we've been doing this since 2019 and started doing 2 batches. And now we have 3 batches per year. And I kind of love the fact that I don't remember everything, because it means we got to a certain level.
Well, it's like when in the early days of a SaaS app, you get emailed or even texted every time someone buys something. Hey, I got a new sign up. And then by the time you're getting 30, 40 signups a day, you're like, I need to cut this off. And that's where we are with this. So we've already started receiving applications as of, let's see, I guess it was Friday. No, it was Monday. It was just a couple days ago. We had a nice steady flow coming in. Tracy,
it's only been 2 days.
Yeah, I know. It feels like
longer.
Yep. Excellent. And Alex, you want to talk a little bit about our decision? Our initial plan was to do one Europe batch a year.
Our plans a little. Our original plan, we might have even said this publicly last Q&A round, but our original plan with the EMEA batch was to do 1 batch per year. It was a new concept. We wanted to. We thought that's where we would start. That's what the Americas batch did for 2 years. Well, turns out we had a ton of demand for the batch. We had a huge number of applications last round, really high quality applications. And it was just a clear indicator that we were ready to jump into 2 batches per year, just like America. So that's where we are now. We decided to introduce a fall batch for EMEA, and I'm super excited. I'm really pumped to bring on this second batch. I'm already seeing a lot of great applicants. So I think it's going to be another strong batch.
Yeah, it's really great to have the Europe batch, have this Europe, I would say time zoned batch, because before previously before we had the dedicated program, we would be running our calls on North American hours, which is where the majority of the Americas team is located in. And so our, folks we supported in France and Ukraine would be coming in at some very odd hours. And so now we have this program and able to do it twice a year, so that folks who are on those time zones have a much, easier to access call slots, like something in their working hours, not having to join at 10 p.m.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything about the program is geared towards being accessible to everybody within the European time zones. And I say European time zones, but I just like to remind everyone that also encompasses anyone in the Middle East or Africa time zone regions. That's why we call it the EMEA batch. So, we kind of been playing back and forth with this TinySeed Europe, EMEA, but really it's inclusive of everybody in those regions. So if you're in the Middle East, if you're in an African country, we would highly encourage you to also apply. That's what our program is was made for.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any questions for the three of us, please pop them into the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube or you can pop them in. Well, I guess that's probably the main place right now. We have a bunch of questions and we need to get into them because what usually happens is we chat for several minutes at the start and we're like, oh, we only have like 8 questions. We'll get through those. And then by the time we've answered 8, there's 16 more. So I really want to try and make good use of our time to get through everything. The first question is from an email and it said, it asks, do you accept founders from Australia or Asia? Tracy.
Yes, we do. We have quite a few founders that are in those time zones. And, one reason I kind of emphasize the time zones is because we don't have our TinySeed APAC program yet. Hopefully that will be in that, hopefully we'll do something about that in the coming time, but it's not here yet. So folks in those areas can apply to join either, or they can choose to join either TinySeed Europe or TinySeed Americas, TinySeed, EMEA, either of the programs, because then they can decide what call time works for them. So are they okay with joining calls that are going to be more focused onto, North and South American hours, or join calls based around European, Africa, Middle East hours? It's not ideal. It's going to be a situation where those hours are going to be a little bit rough. I know that we have a founder in Japan who was saying that, sometimes the calls, they pop up at like 4 a.m. And I think a lot of folks in Japan understand that if they're working remotely for, an American company, that's usually what happens. The thing we do, though, is that every mentor call, everything that we do is recorded. And we have like an internal dashboard. We post those recordings. Before the call is actually run, we take questions beforehand. So if someone can't attend the call, or if it's at hours that don't work for them, they can pop in, leave their questions, and then I make sure those questions are covered in that call and they can review the recording afterwards. So A, you can choose which program works best for you in terms of those time zones. But B, you can join either of them. And if it doesn't work for you, you don't have to attend anything live, because we have those things set up so that you can still participate without having to attend live.
Yep. And they're in the TinySeed application at tinyseed.com/apply, where it says which accelerator are you applying for, which region. There is a don't know option. And some people use that, and we will help figure out what, the best option is.
Yeah, we'll have a chat with you.
Yep. All right. Our next, welcome to everyone who has just joined us. Tracy, Alex, and I are asking questions about everything TinySeed. Or feel free to post something, question in the chat if you want it answered. Next question, do all of the founders need to be full-time? And the answer is no, but we fund companies based on the number of founders. And so you can go to tinyseed.com/FAQ to see what our funding ranges are. And it's, X amount for one founder, and then more for 2 and
number
more for 3.
Of full-time founders.
Full-time. So that's the caveat is what do we consider a founder, who you get funding for? They need to own at least 15% of the company, and they need to go full-time. They need to either be full-time or go full-time. And usually it's within a month or 2 of starting the accelerator batch. So we have had a couple companies where one founder was full-time and the other founder had a consulting business on the side, a personal brand, and they wanted to still work in the business, but they didn't go full-time. And so we funded them as if there were one founder. And so we are open to working with you there. Next question, do you have to be, or do you need to have a technical co-founder to apply to TinySeed? Alex, what's your call?
Absolutely not. That's an easy one. You do not need to be technical. You don't need to have a technical co-founder. We have plenty of founders in the program who are not technical founders, and that's great too. There's plenty of discussion outside of technical topics going on in the TinySeed Slack, often around topics like sales, marketing, growth, those types of things. So yeah, that's a straightforward one. No.
Yeah, we don't nitpick what your skill set is when coming into TinySeed, because one thing is we have the resources that help you figure out whether it is help you figure out how to judge engineering teams, or how to hire remotely, or for folks who are technical co-founders, how to run the marketing side of things and sales and all that kind of jazz. So the kind of founder or the kind of background you have doesn't matter for us, and we try to support you with resources no matter where you're coming from.
Yeah, and you don't need a technical co-founder. What you do need is a product, in the market, a SaaS product that's doing at a minimum 500 MRR and up. And what I noticed too, a quick anecdote, I think across our first couple of batches, and we were just talking, we're either doing, these are either 6 and 7 or 5, 6 and 7 or 7 and 8. So first couple batches were a lot more technical co-founders, at least one. And I think the numbers of non-technical was maybe 15% of companies. But hey, Jason, hey, from Poland. I think that number has increased actually. And I haven't run the numbers lately, but if I were to guess just on a feel, I bet we're up north of 25, approaching 30% that, don't have a technical co-founder. So thanks for that question. Next question. I was rejected in a previous round. Should I reapply? Tracy makes.
I was going to say, I hope you pass this over to me because I'm going to be very enthusiastic and say, yes. Please reply. It is heartbreaking because I'm the one who does send those emails out to reject everyone. That came directly from me, if anyone got that. And it's heartbreaking because we have limited slots in each cohort, and we kind of develop each of the cohort sizes to kind of make sure that we can support folks with the amount of resources and the resources of the team that we can offer, and we want to make sure that still stays accessible to all the founders that come in. So we have a limited number of slots in each round, and that means that there's a lot of folks who are in a really good place that we would otherwise fund, but just happens to be that we have to fund other folks. They're on SARP's The Rest of Us, Rob's podcast. And there is we have a series called TinySeed Tales. And right now, the current season is featuring Tony of Cloud Forecast. Tony applied, 4 times before making it to TinySeed? And it was one of those cases where where Cloud Forecast was, when he applied, each time it wasn't quite the right fit, or he wasn't the right level for TinySeed yet. Still figuring out product market fit, still kind of working through things, and we did send them a rejected email 3 times, and he kept working on this company and kept adding growth it came to a point where we just could not say no, because it was he got to that level where it was yes, now is the time for TinySeed, for you, for Cloud Forecast, for him and Francois, his co-founder. So I think Tony's a really great example of how we reapplicants are really great, because we can see the journey that you're taking between those applications. We can see your prior applications. And, if that's why I try to be really enthusiastic, and I know that it sucks to be rejected, but if you're still interested in TinySeed and you've had growth in between your applications, please definitely reapply. I don't want to say that there was a bonus, but I know that because it gives us more history and it gives us more information about your product and it shows us more about you as a founder, it does, kind of move things in your favor.
Yeah. And I would definitely say that, making progress between the two applications, if you're still the same revenue you were 6 months ago, it's a little less interesting because it's have TinySeed can help. So we want to invest in companies that we can help. And there are certain companies, if you don't have any semblance of product market fit, and you don't have you did one deal a day thing and you got to 500 or 1,000 a month, and you have no other channels that you've started working on, it is really hard. Us giving you money and mentorship is a lot less likely to move your needle now than if you had one channel in place and you have a bit more product market fit and you're at 2, 3, 4K MRR. That is a place where we can really accelerate your growth. I'm not saying that, we have funded companies in those early stages, and we've had mixed results versus the, 1,000 to 10,000, where it's there's so much more, there's so much more we can do for you. And we want to invest in companies that we can help.
Yeah, the things that we've set up, and the resources, and the way that we run our program is really helping scale a company that already has that initial platform, as compared to helping you figure out where your initial platform is.
Can I tell a story about reapplications before we move on? Because this is
yes.
This is a super interesting one that I really loved. One of our most recent founders told us that he applied to TinySeed regularly as a business exercise. And apparently, Rob, I think you had mentioned that on a Q&A or a podcast episode, and he had taken you up on that. And he had been applying to TinySeed, I think, regularly as an exercise, not really expecting to actually move forward. And one day we reached out and we were like, hey, let's talk. And here he is. So I thought that was really cool. That's another way to approach it. And And also just to prove we really do support reapplication. So there's no negative outlook from our point of view if you've reapplied multiple times.
All right. Questions are literally pouring in faster than we can answer them. So I have more stories to tell, but let's go. So the next one is, I noticed that TinySeed already backed a company that is similar to mine. Will that be a problem? And what I'll say, the short answer is, I don't know. I would encourage you, if in doubt, apply. If in doubt, apply, and we will take a look and figure out if it's going to be an issue. Here's, we're literally going to back hundreds of companies. We are, with these 2 batches, we will cross the 100 mark of companies backed just in TinySeed. So there is no way that we can say our entire fund across all batches will never invest in 2 companies that are competing, because that's just, it's unrealistic, right? There are only so many spaces. In addition, companies pivot all the time, and they often pivot to a place of most opportunity. They both see the opportunity at the same time, and they go after it. So, we've never said we will never back. I mean, no one says that, right? No accelerator, no one who's going to back companies in bulk can just not back competitors. What we've done our best to do is to try not to back 2 competitors in the same batch. Hopefully we can keep that up. I just don't know. It's hard to make a commitment to that. But so I won't say we'll never back 2 competitors, but honestly, it just depends. It depends on how competitive. As you say, it's a similar company. Like, is it identical? Are you 2 going head to head? Or is it, we've often seen where it's like, well, one has picked a slightly different niche. So I'm CRM for construction managers versus CRM for home improvement contractors, which are related but slightly different, as an example. So if in doubt, fill it out. The application. If in doubt, fill it out. Yeah, I just that's so bad. All right, so
I like that.
Now we have a couple questions from a Slack. One is from Glitchwitch. Is there a cap on total dividends that TinySeed can receive over the lifetime of the company? And no, there is not a cap. We purchase equity in your company. It is not a loan. So you do not buy back equity from us. We want to be in your corner for the long term. So if you have a 2-year or a 22-year journey, we want to backstop you. And equity is the most proven form, literally hundreds and hundreds of years. Dutch India company, I think in 1500s, like that's when equity was developed, where you could sell it in another company. That is how proven equity is. We looked at 6 different modes and models and funding avenues back in 2018 when we were trying to figure this out, and we landed on equity as being not only the most proven, but the one that aligns us with the founders for the long term. All right. Another question from Glitchwitch is there the option for bootstrap founders of successful companies to buy back the 10 to 12% that TinySeed owns in the future? Has this ever happened? Well, it hasn't happened yet. And the option is, of course, there's always, if you're like, hey, I want to buy out my investors, then we have a conversation about that. There is no predetermined valuation for that, or some predetermined, so it would need to be a conversation. We've been funding companies for 4 years, so it would be a little early for that to happen. Thank you for asking. And what you'll notice is, if you can buy back equity, those terms are often, have a lot of if-then else's in them. They're often, I would say, a bit more complicated. You want to dig into them because it's not just straight equity. It's like, well, if you do this and you raise at this valuation, then this happens in that, and you really want to sort that out. In addition, the buyback equity is, as I said, it's a little more of a loan. And in that, if I was going to go after that personally, I'd almost go after more like revenue-based financing. That's, often a cleaner option. Mm-hmm. So there are pros and cons to it. As a founder, I know which option I would choose. It's the option that we developed. All right. Bhavesh has a couple questions. What are the requirements for demonstrating a sales funnel?
So that's a question on our application form where I say, like, walk us through your sales funnel. And I can kind of see how that can sound very intimidating. Basically, we want to know how you're getting customers and what the process they take to, become, a full-fledged customer on your site. What's your onboarding process? Where do they find you? Is there a full sales process? Is it self-serve? Rob, am I getting that right? Just kind of like, we wanted to see what that process is and kind of help us, figure out how that works with your company.
Yep. And I mean, some answers are SEO, organic Google search traffic with a little arrow, a text arrow, website, homepage and Explorer, to credit card trial to, customer. And if you have the numbers for those, percentages, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. We can ask you. I think the point of it is for us to understand a little more about your business and to make sure, like, if you don't have a product in the market, you're probably not a fit for TinySeed. You're not a fit. And so that's one of the questions where you'll say, I don't know what the funnel is because I don't have a product in the market. And it just, makes it easier and saves us and saves you time.
Yeah. So it doesn't need to be a huge, essay, as Rob says, it could be just, a single line kind of walking through that process.
Yes, indeed. Next question. What are some of the reasons founders typically apply for TinySeed? What are some benefits beyond funding? And I'm going to toss this to you, Tracy, in a second. But when we first started TinySeed, we thought, the funding is going to be such an important part. And you know what? 75% of our founders say, funding's nice, but I applied to TinySeed and the value that I got out of TinySeed are all the other things that you offer. And so, Tracy, you want to talk a little bit about those?
Really briefly, because if you go to tinyseed.com/program, we have a very long page talking about all the aspects around the TinySeed program and what, it's basically dedicated for everything other than the funding. The frequently asked questions will go into those details at the bottom. But essentially, we have a robust community of like-minded founders who are ambitious, who've been working on these SaaS businesses that, most of them are bootstrapped. And it's just, having this group of folks to collaborate, to commiserate with, to talk to. So the community is huge. We also have a large roster of experienced entrepreneurs and subject matter experts on the mentor roster. So we have copywriting experts, we have user experience experts, we have folks who are experts in sales. And so whenever a founder is trying to learn a new skill or jumping into a new campaign on their side, they can kind of shorten the information gathering process by being connected to our mentors and getting that expert advice. And I think access to the TinySeed team is really helpful, to have Rob and Einar, often folks will be, do one-on-ones with Rob and Einar and get that, their advice through, kind of like an advisor role, their advice through the lifetime of their company. What else am I missing, Alex?
The community, for sure. The Slack.
Did I start with community?
What's that?
Very strong.
Did I start with community?
I may have missed that. I might have been like queuing up my answer, but that's the second thing when because we talk about this sometimes in the interviews, and people say mentors, but also access to other founders. Sometimes it can be a bit lonely. Some people to share.
Also, why we do the cohort model,
Exactly.
rather than allowing people to just join. Like it's, there's a different ways to do it. If someone can join it at any moment, that's also cool. But we like it when people can start this accelerator year, this year-long journey together. So they have like a beginning date and it's really exciting and everyone's starting out, and then we can run through our program, and then we have a final celebration at the end of that year. And actually I tell them nothing really changes at the end of the accelerator year. You just kind of, you still have access to our calls, you still have access to the team and all that. But it does make this like wonderful year-long journey between everybody. And I think it really forms connections between the founders we work with.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The founders who really dive into it, I mean, they're in Slack daily. Like, it is daily touch points if you want it to be. And if you don't and you're quieter, then some people, some of the founders just aren't really in Slack. I think we have 300 something folks, including some of our investors who opted in. We have mentors, we have the TinySeed team, and we have the founders who are all there to offer advice. And the advice is very poignant, and it's super high signal to noise ratio, the highest of any group I've ever been in all honesty.
Yeah, and I know some people are scared of Slack workspaces because they could be notification hell holes. So I will say that ours, chef's kiss. I think that everyone has done a really great job of being really respectful of people's time, but we still allow that community. Everyone threads. We no one uses chat channels or anything like that, and I think it's really worked to allow folks the space where they can ask questions anytime.
Yeah, head to tinyseed.com/program. You should look through it because there is a lot more than most people think, because there are other programs that run that are, you look at accelerators that are 3 months long, or people say, hey, I have an accelerator. And it's like, well, we do it like live Q&A once a week. And it's like, no, ours is way, way more than that, including in-person
I didn't talk
events
about the
3 times a year.
playbook, which is
There's
our 3-month series of educational calls that we have planned for the start of the program. And so the playbook is actually probably one of the most valuable parts of the TinySeed program as we go through things like marketing and sales, and Rob and Einar's top pieces of advice.
Everything I know about pricing. It's everything I know about choosing the right marketing approaches for a company. It's, it's all of like the deep dark secrets. They're not dark secrets. They're just secrets. So. All right, let's move to the next one. We have some good questions coming up. Having funded such a large number of companies at this point, I'd imagine trends start to emerge. With that in mind, are there any particular challenges you regularly see companies struggle with that TinySeed is able to help with during the batch? Alex, what have you seen? You've been around for one batch so far, but have there been commonalities that you feel like we especially excel at?
Yeah, and I think there's probably several answers to this, but I'll point out one especially that I've seen is a lot of founders come in and they're kind of the builders of a product, and they're very much in a building mindset, and they're struggling to kind of shift or build the skill sets that are needed for marketing and sales and growing the business. And I think that's somewhere we really excel on two fronts. We have, of course, our mentorships, our mentors who are available to guide, provide insight and expertise that would normally take you months or years to really learn or make decisions on. Our playbooks, just a ton of knowledge in that sense, but also a bit of accountability too. So Tracy, I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but part of the program is our mastermind. So there's a sense of accountability built within the TinySeed program. So you're put into a mastermind with other people in your batch. And one of the common discussion points is, what are you struggling with right now? So for people like that are struggling to move from building to growing, that type of mindset, that's something that they can focus on and have their fellow TinySeed founders hold them accountable.
Anything to add, Tracy?
Like I said, Alex got it all. My answer would have been also just the marketing, getting customers question, I think is
a big one.
Yeah, it's a very common startup thing, which is like, where do I find customers? Where do I find more customers? How do I widen my funnel? What do I do with my customers? How do I convert my customers? And I think that's also why a lot of our resources are revolving around that aspect of running a startup.
Yeah. And I will weigh in just with I just jotted down 4 things. I could probably put 10, but 4 high-level strategic things that I have talked to and helped founders with in the past, say, 45 days. Raising prices, what they should raise to, why they should. We did a call, they mapped something out. I looked at it. We looked at their customer base. I said, that's pretty reasonable. And then they were like, but there's an emotional component to it. It's actually easy to raise prices, but it's really scary. So then coaching them through that. Marketing strategy, which Tracy and Alex talked about, which oftentimes is like, well, what marketing approaches might be a fit for me? Which should I try first? How should I try them? Is there a consultant or a contractor, someone who can either advise me or help me do it? And we have a very, very extensive network. And I would say one of the best in SaaS for finding people to help you. Hiring. We've seen people make their first hire. We've seen some people make their 5th or their 10th hire and need advice. So hiring your first person, you need a lot of advice on just hiring. Hiring your 10th person, you start to need management, delegation, supervision, corporate, org structure. Like everyone can't report to you anymore. So we've seen the journeys, from the zeros to the 8 figures to know, like, this is how we would structure it. Acquisition interest or investment interest, if that comes your way, which a lot
A&R is doing this right now.
I know a lot of TinySeed companies, we start getting on people's radar. Once a week, you get people wanting to invest in you. And a lot of times it's some junior, rep at a VC firm who's just prospecting, but sometimes you get someone who really wants to acquire you. And it's like, well, what do I do with that? And you come to us. A&R is an absolute expert on SaaS. So those are just 4 examples of things, and I could keep going, but we will run out of time. Good question. Thank you. Philip asks, can you elaborate on the criteria a startup needs in terms of growth to be accepted into the program? We don't have like a hard, I know we say 500 a month and up. We don't have a hard and fast number in terms of growth because it just depends. It depends on your space and where you're at. And if you're at 1,000 versus 20,000 versus 40,000, it depends. I will say the faster you're growing, the more interesting it is. That's it. I mean, we do look. It is one of the many factors we look at. But all that to say, have we accepted companies that have some traction but have stalled and are growing slower? We have, and so I would never rule it out. That's just where it is.
Yeah, Ricky? I will say we haven't accepted companies at anyone who's at 0. We don't accept. 500 is what we say in the application. I want to say that there is a little bit of wiggle room there, but again, as Rob says, it depends.
Ricky Chilcott asks, what is the expected batch size and the historical acceptance rate?
Say about 15 to 25. That's always our aim.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
EMEA is about more on the 10 to 15
range.
I
think.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I think in Americas.
The answer is it does depend. We have enough money to fund a lot of companies, and we need to kind of dribble that out over the next couple years, depending on how long the funds last. But yeah, 10 to 15, 15 to 20-ish, I'd say is reasonable. Our biggest batch is 18 or 19, and our most recent Europe batch, which was the first one, was 10. So I think that's a pretty good range. Acceptance rate, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not big. 1%, 2% of applicants.
Yeah.
It's pretty low. So
It's pretty low.
But that's
why we love reapplicants. Please reapply. Please.
You do increase your chances.
We want to hear from you again. It makes me so happy to see people I've talked to beforehand.
And see the progress they're making, right, with their business. Because whether they take funding from us or whether they are successful on their own, like, I'm still happy for them. And that's just cool to see the stories. Faizan Lakhani says, are Pakistani startups eligible to apply?
Yes.
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 Now, we can't promise. The answer is yes. We can't promise that we can fund a Pakistani entity, a corporate entity. I don't know, but the odds are, there are odds that you may need to reincorporate as a Delaware C Corp or a U.S. entity. Now, that hasn't been the case with some other countries where I guess it's been easier to find legal representation and more. I'll say more. It has to make financial sense. When we're investing 120, 160, 180, like, we can't spend $20,000 on legal fees, and so we have to make decisions based on that. But yes,
this is a something we can do. We can talk with you over the interview stage. We can work through that process. We can figure out where you are.
Figure it out.
Like, so, don't worry about it. We will talk to you, and we'll figure something out if that's, wherever situation you're in.
Joe on LinkedIn asks, so if I love 7 a.m. Eastern time meetings, I should join the European cohort?
Come and join us, Joe. I will gladly welcome you. Actually, the times I usually schedule for the Europe batch actually works out not too bad in Eastern time. It's usually around 9 or 10 a.m. Eastern, so you can sleep in a little bit, Joe.
Yeah, the only thing that I'm thinking is I believe the charter of the Europe fund or the EMEA fund is to invest mostly. It's not a hard invest.
Sorry, I was being a little facetious there.
Yeah. But certainly there are ways. We funded you out of the U.S. If you wanted to attend a Europe call, like, I think these things are pretty easy to work out. All right, Glitchwitch from Microconf Connect. With applications being open for 2 weeks, does applying at the last minute tend to reduce the chances of getting in?
It might just speed up the time between response. I think that's the only thing that would change. Folks who apply at the very start of applications, we're still waiting for some to roll in. We're still figuring out, setting things up before we start sending out those interviews. But of course, by the end of applications, then that process is rolling. But no, there's no change in your chances of getting in wherever you apply within that process. And that's one of the reasons why our application system has a save draft function. And I can also ping people who are in draft or remind them to submit. But we did that because I didn't want people to stress out about, having to fill out their application and then lose their progress or not want, I want to give people a way to go back and review what they've done, and spend those 2 weeks kind of refining things before they submit. So wherever you're submit in the application process, your chances are equal. It just might mean that early in the application process might be a little bit more of a delay before you hear from us versus the end.
We are already rating applications, and we will start doing calls soon.
Very soon. I think we're about to send out the first invitations,
First
Tracy,
couple
right?
invites.
Yeah, soon.
It's exciting. All right. Mega Chawla on YouTube says, we are just launching and bringing initial customers to the platform, but we don't have 500 in MRR yet. Can we still apply? The answer is, of course, you can still apply. The odds of us getting in touch with you are a lot lower. I would say the application, if you know your numbers, takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you have to look some stuff up. as I said on the podcast, and actually someone tweeted it to me as what happened. They said, I just filled out the TinySeed application. It taught me more about my business than I knew when I walked in. Like I learned things about how they think about what a successful business is, and it got me thinking. So personally, I think it's a good exercise. But the odds of you getting in at this point are very, very slim. We haven't funded like essentially a pre-launch or a just launch company unless they have really, good traction very quickly.
The other advantage to apply, if you go into it knowing that it's more unlikely that we'll be getting in touch with you, and you are planning on applying again, and when we do our applications, I think it will probably be next January. It means we have that history, and we'll be able to grab that old application and see your growth in between. So there is like a small advantage perhaps for your second application if you submit one now.
Yes. And Brian Gorham on YouTube says, why does the number of founders affect the check size? Curious why that affects the valuation. So there's a couple reasons. Number one, historically, that's how every accelerator operates, is it's a per founder. There's usually a base plus a per founder check. The logic behind it has varied. Sometimes it's, if you have 3 founders, they need more to live on. That was the old Paul Graham Y Combinator thing. Which isn't that valid today. But the other thing is having 2 or 3 founders working on a product means that I'd say the odds are decent that the company is going to move faster because you do have more full-time people who are solely focused on it, working on it in essence. And so, I guess in the end, I should always caveat this with, I like 1 and 2 founder teams personally. We have definitely funded 3 and 4 founder teams, but they are in bootstrapping. They are usually, I say, an anomaly.
Yeah, a good example, or excuse me, a longer answer to the number of founders question. We have a recent blog post. I think it's like what makes a best fit startup or best fit team for TinySeed, and in there we kind of dive into the number of founders, just in terms of our thought process there. And what questions we're asking ourselves depending on those number of founders. That doesn't really relate to the money question, but if you're curious about the number of founders, what Rob was saying, that would be a good place to look.
Dennis Shuryev on YouTube says, if our MRR is $15,000 and we are a SaaS, are we too big for TinySeed or still worth a shot? That is exactly in our sweet spot. And in fact, we have funded the highest MRR we've ever funded is 100,000. That's a month, not ARR. So absolutely, we very commonly are funding between 2,000 and 40,000 a month. And that is, we fund above that, but that's just tends to be.
Because that's that sweet spot where you have that base of customers, you have folks coming in, you're looking for, how to widen your funnel, or you're looking at how to refine that process. And all the things that TinySeed does in terms of helping you scaling, all the things we do will be better applied to a business at that level.
Question from Brett R on YouTube. Can you elaborate more on the churn question in the application? And the question says, you can also calculate lifetime value using churn, which is a number you likely have more readily available. So churn, which is we want revenue churn, and that is the total amount of MRR that canceled that month divided by your starting MRR during that month. That's the simplest way to calculate it. So you had $500 in MRR that you lost due to cancellations. You were started at 10,000 MRR. You're now at 9,500 plus anything you added. But that 500 divided by 10,000 is 5% churn. And then lifetime value, there's an easy calculation. It's average revenue per account divided by your churn. So average revenue per account per month. If that's, let's say $100 per month is your average revenue for every customer, for every person or company paying you $100, and you do have that 5% churn. I said it's 100 divided by 0.05, which, is that 2,000? Anyways, yeah, I think that's 2,000. I don't have to do the math. I can just.
I was going to say you're brave, very brave, trying to do math.
Yeah, I know.
The live stream.
All right. So thanks for that question, Brett. That's helpful to hear that about the application. So Ricky Chilcott on YouTube says our business model is a mix of SaaS, consulting, and training. Any major concerns about applying as long as our SaaS offering is over the minimum MRR requirements? Alex.
That's a good question because we do have this come up occasionally. No, you should still apply. I think you hit it on the nail on the head. You should make sure that you're over the minimum MRR requirement. We'll primarily be looking at, obviously, the SaaS part of your business. The other thing I would point out too is just making sure again that you're a B2B SaaS. On that, that's another difference that's come up on someone's application. They've had a B2C side and a B2B side. We want to hear about the B2B side.
And just be sure to call it out. Like sometimes we'll get someone who comes in and says, I have $50,000 of MRR. And then we dig into it. And what they have is $1,000 of SaaS MRR and $49,000 of consulting MRR, which is fine. It is still a fundable business, but we want to know that up front. Like put it in the comments, just spell it out. We read through the comments. It's not just like there's some algorithm looking at numbers. So if you just say,
it's all human read,
right? It's three of us plus A&R, we're going through it. So it's like, just call it out that, hey, this is training, this is that. And then we can ask you about it if we get to interview. Brett Hart from YouTube says, I understand that this is a difficult question to answer, but of the companies you have funded in the past, is there a common thread among them? I'm going to go first and you all can weigh in. The common thread is they are B2B, and they are SaaS.
I was about to say the same thing. I was like, you wanted to get the easy one. Yeah.
That's it.
I can't think of any other threads. Yeah.
Go to tinyseed.com/portfolio and look through, and it's like CRM for home improvement contractors, and it's inventory management software for Etsy sellers, and what else?
I would say for B2C, there's also I feel like most B2C companies often have like a very large piece of the business that is B2B. And if you're B2C, but that is something that you're building, I feel like that's worth applying to and kind of talking about that, or if you have that starting to be in place. So it's not to say that B2C is like automatic rejection. TinySeed's bread and butter is B2B SaaS, and a lot of our resources are revolved around that. But that's also most B2C companies build in that part of the business. And so that's still relevant to those kind of companies.
Welcome to those who are still joining. We are answering questions about TinySeed, and I do think we will have time to answer more questions. Obviously, there's like another 10 in the outline here.
It's a really good one at the end. I'm looking forward to.
I know I might skip.
No.
Yeah. No. All right. So next from Cameron Henneke. They ask, if we are accepted to TinySeed and get substantial growth as a result of the program, will TinySeed help us sell the business if we decide to exit and it makes sense at that point? We absolutely consult. We actually literally have a dedicated email address that anytime you have acquisition interest that you forward it to, and Einar, who has extensive experience on the sell side M&A for SaaS.
Einar's off, he's doing some very business things with people with a lot of seats right now. But I'm saying, like, there's probably moments in this live stream where he's just like, he gets so excited to help people, work through selling their businesses, evaluating those offers. He's like that expert person, that person that can really help you walk through that process. And
we have a playbook on
that he runs.
Playbook on M&A. We have several mentors, including myself, who have sold companies for 7 and 8 figures, and actually a couple for in 9 figures. Like, yes, there's extensive support, and not only, we have the mechanics of it, which Einar and a few others, myself included, can advise on, having been exposed to or been part of acquisitions. We have the mental health side, which is maybe even more important. We have folks who can help talk you through that. And then there's even just the decision, like, should I sell? That is often a hard decision. And having seen, across our team and mentors, it's like having seen whatever the number is, 20, 50, 100 acquisitions, like, we can help point out some patterns of like, hey, maybe sell if this is in place, maybe don't if this is, it's your choice. So, all right, Capitan Lunares. Yeah, I like that. Capitan Lunares says, if it's a free B2C product and haven't yet added a paywall, thus no revenue yet, does this disqualify me? Alex.
I would refer back to Rob's earlier answer. You can absolutely apply, but at this point, it's probably a slim chance of moving forward. That being said, I think
it's like, go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah. What were you to say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, when you add that paywall, when you start bringing revenue, your business is going to change. And that's, we need to see what that looks like before you've joined TinySeed. So it's like, it's one of those kind of things where it's like, all of a sudden you realize more challenges. You're going to figure out like problems of, maybe it's harder to convert your customers than you planned on doing. So all those things you need to have like at least mostly solved before joining TinySeed, which is why we want to see that revenue coming in.
And it's, it's for you as well, that we make sure that, if you already have that traction when you come into the program, that means you're able to take advantage of the resources and really scale, which is our goal. So the reason we also push for that is just to make sure that we're actually giving you the best value that we can, and that we can help you scale.
We want to be able to help you. Yeah. And I would say if you truly are B2C, you're probably not a fit. Just the marketing.
You want to get a lot of value from some of the resources we have, because the challenges are so different.
Right. Ricky Chilcott asks, what is the timeline between a funding offer and required acceptance? That's interesting.
It's interesting. So it's when we send, like the timing for us requiring them to respond.
Do we have an exploding offer? 24 hours, answer, you're gone. Do we do that, Tracy?
We don't have an exploding offer.
No, but usually, look, we are trying to fund 20 to 30 companies all at once within a 60-day period. So we send it, and usually it's like, we need an answer this week type thing. And if you really need the weekend, like you can ask for it, but it's like, I think it's days, not weeks.
We have like a really short, it's, we send out the offer, we need to do diligence. This batch we started on November 1st. So we have about a month and a half between that start. Due diligence can still roll once the batch has started, because that process can take a while. But that's one of the reasons why it's like we can't really delay on accepting the offer, because there's so many more pieces to get in place, because the batch is starting very soon.
Brian Gorman asks, can you talk more about calculating average monthly revenue churn? How does this metric look if there's no churn, no cancellations, plus expansion revenue? So that is called net negative churn, and you would put it in as a negative number, and that will instantly go to the top of my list to talk to you if you have net negative churn. So that's one of the cheat codes of SaaS I always talk about. So that's if you have zero churn and you added $500 in expansion and you're at 10,000 MRR, you now have negative 5% churn, meaning the business grows all on its own when you don't add customers. Yes, please apply. All right. Artem Legotin says, let's say we can choose between two pricing models, one with a high price and high churn. That doesn't happen. And one with low price and low churn. Nope, never seen it. But both give the same LTV. Which one should I choose and why? I don't know. This comes down to business advice. For me, it's like high price. I don't know that I've ever seen a high price have higher churn than a low price. Like ever. And I hate to say I never use always and never. I get it. Never use always and never. But just as a rule, that's not going to happen. It depends on the business, honestly. If it's low price and it's going after a broad swath of people, where the larger your customer base, the faster it grows, so you have some element of virality, then actually you do want a larger customer base. And in your example, then having a lower price means you have more customers, and that would do better. Again, I've never seen that happen. All right, Glitchwitch, if your business, I'm zipping through these because we have 12 minutes. Thank everyone for your questions. If you keep posting them, I think we might get to them. If your business is making non-recurring revenue from consulting in addition to recurring revenue from software, should you include the total revenue in your application or just the recurring revenue, the software revenue? And I think we talked about it earlier.
Yeah, but the MRR. Yeah, you can put it in the comments. Feel free to add in the comments your consulting revenue, but for the MRR field on the actual application, put
the software recurring revenue. Yep.
Exactly.
And the cool part, here's the thing though, you do get credit if you're doing $2,000 a month in software revenue and you have $10,000 a month in consulting. That tells us your default to live, assuming you're right. So it isn't as if it's zero. Like you are in a better spot than someone with just 2K of MRR, where we know you're going to be burning a bunch of money. So
yeah, it's good to mention.
It is because it's a plus. Back to Ricky Chilcott. Are there any particular sectors you're particularly interested in growing or representing in the portfolio?
I feel like we're pretty neutral on that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm speaking for you, Rob. Is there anything you've got your eye on?
I like great businesses.
There you go.
People,
and there's
pricing,
lots of
product
great
market
niche,
fit.
Great businesses. It's so cool seeing what people are building software for.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan McElroy, assuming my SaaS tool catches traction fast during launch, how do I protect the business from another company with more money and knowledge from stealing my market share during this launch phase? I'm going to kick that one either to another live stream, or given that we only have 10 minutes, or we'll kick it to the end of this, because I appreciate it as a business strategy question, but I do want to answer, I'm trying to copy paste it here. I do want to answer TinySeed related questions. All right. Web Developer Ninja on YouTube says, if Rob was a Jedi, would he go light side or dark side? Now, that's a question we can dig into. All right. Does everyone have like an hour? So the lightsaber.
You gotta go through your gut. What's your gut?
Well, no, you two need to weigh in. I'm going to wrap my answer down here, and then two of you weigh in. All right.
On what you would be? That's the question. Yeah.
Rob would be. Yep.
I feel like
I have this vision of you as light side and Einar's dark side.
I would be called that too. Good cop, bad cop.
And my answer was light side. See right there?
Yes.
All right. Ryan McElroy is like, you answered that question and not my question about strategy. Sorry, dude. I'm really going to try to get to your question now. All right. So Philip asks, what does the application process look like? What comes after the application?
Can I get this one?
Yep.
Yes. All right. So application process, submit the application. So, basically we go through our applications in kind of big review chunks. So if a lot of the folks who are like not right now, you'll probably get your response, maybe the week that applications end or the week afterwards. Depends on how fast we are. So initial rejections will be going out in those areas. Initial interviews will also be going out in that same time period. But the initial interview, depending on the amount of applications we have to go through, that email might take a week or two more, just because we're going through folks and trying to get those interviews scheduled, and that's kind of a time limited process. I want to say offers will probably be going out at the beginning of October. And that might continue on through October. I don't know. Hopefully not, because we're, kind of works on that process. Not through October. I think it'll be earlier than that. And then folks who accept the offers, we're going to due diligence, and the batch will be starting on November 1st. And folks, like I said before, even if you haven't finished due diligence, because that's lawyers going back and forth, it can take a while. We're fine with that going on maybe a little bit longer. So it's not like a hard stop, or like if your due diligence is not finished, you don't get to join the batch. We're more flexible than that. And then sometimes I should say there's at least two interviews. Interview with myself or Alex as the initial interview. We kind of go through. Generally, Alex is taking the EMEA applications. Generally, I'm taking the Americas. We split the ones that are maybe in either of those batches, and then you'll be talking with Rob and Einar as a second interview. Maybe sometimes there's another one, but really it's two calls through the process.
Next question is from Kashif Ali. They ask, do you consider educational institutions a B, as in B2B? Absolutely. Any entity that makes purchasing decisions based on value rather than cheapness. Mm-hmm. The consumers are very cheap. Consumers complain when Netflix raises their price $1. Consumers churn very often. So the closer you get to that, the less interested we are. And have we invested in more prosumer businesses? Absolutely. Etsy sellers are, they're a prosumer business, and we have a great business called Crafty Base that we've invested in. Podcasters can be prosumer. Some are, and some are bigger businesses. And so have we invested in podcast hosting Castos and podcast recording? Help me. Squadcast. Thank you. I'm trying to remember a lot of things off the top of my head, but yeah, Squadcast. Well, absolutely we have. So yes, and we've also invested in companies that are focused on government or educational or anything like that.
Yeah, as recent as last batch, I think we had two tech companies.
Yep. And Jojo asks, do you have a CAC to LTV checklist or something similar? We do not. Oftentimes, especially our earlier stage folks don't have that. It's not figured out yet. There's not high enough volume. So we ask the questions in the application so that we can review them with context, and it's not math formulas. That's not how we make our decisions. Craig Hewitt on YouTube.
Hey, Craig.
Speaking of the founder of Castos, yeah. Is there an average revenue? He says ARPU.
Unless it's a different Craig Hewitt.
Yeah, exactly. The Craig Hewitt on Twitter. Is there an ARPA range, average revenue per account, you see as a good fit for TinySeed? Does this correlate to the higher growing SaaS companies industry-wide? It's a good question. Mine from memory across 81 companies funded, I believe the lowest ARPA or ARPU, as some people say, I think was maybe $15 at the time of funding.
Pops in my head too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have funded, and that's low. I mean, that's, we have a lot of companies where their ARPA is 250 to 500, like a lot. I would say that's I don't know if it's a majority yet. I haven't actually looked at it, but it's just going kind of from memory. So I can't imagine. And that is a question I'll ask you in the interview. If your ARPA is 15, 20, 25, I'll say, this is pretty low. You got to have a really big space. Your churn's going to be high. How are you thinking about increasing that? Because that's what you're going to want to do over time, whether it's going after enterprises or whether it's adding more features or whether it's increasing price, whatever it is to get, into that. I don't know. The sweet spot for me starts to be in the 40s, 50s, where I'm like, okay, I can be more comfortable with that. I think there's a bunch of reasons behind it. Probably don't have to go into, but, and does that correlate to higher growth? Yeah. I mean, the higher ARPA you have, usually the lower your churn, which usually means your lifetime value is high, which usually means you can spend more on marketing and do more marketing approaches. So yes.
Life is a little easier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't mean we answer these questions, but like none of these are hard and fast rules. So I don't want someone to be like, well, I only have $20 average revenue per account, so I shouldn't apply. It's like, no, we're not saying that. We're just saying I'm going to ask you about it, right? Mm-hmm. Colin Bartlett asks, do you require all founders to work full-time on the business if you invest? And Brian Gorman's question is related, says, does having a full-time job affect how you evaluate a business for TinySeed? How quickly do you expect founders to quit if accepted? So we fund based on the number of founders who go full-time and own 15% of the business. So if one founder decides not to go full-time, then you won't get as much funding, is basically what happens there. If no founders want to go full-time, then we won't fund the business. You have to be focused. We have to have at least one founder focus full-time. And we encourage everyone to, if you're willing and able. Brian's question, we have funded several companies many companies where the founders were still working full-time at the time that we funded them. Usually they want to get out of that full-time job as quickly as possible and focus on it. And so we've seen people accept our offer, and before they have the money, they quit their job. We've seen people quit their job once the money comes in. We've seen them quit their job with like, well, I really want to get I'm the boss, I'm a big manager, and I want to give them like 6 weeks. So it's going to be midway through the first month of the batch. Like, any of this is fine. Just work with us. It's like, we don't have a hard and fast policy, but it's just kind of, the business will grow faster when you're focused full time on it, and you want that, and so do we. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where it is. All right. Andrew Tang has a question, somewhat related to questions about how consulting revenue counts towards MRR. How should you factor in transaction fees? We charge a percentage of payments that we collect on behalf of our customer. What do y'all think?
I actually want to put that to you. I was curious what.
Yeah.
Answer is it depends. Just call
I know.
it out.
I was like, okay.
Here's what I would do. I think if it's, let's say you have subscription revenue and then transaction revenue. We have 10 companies in TinySeed that do that, 5 or 10. And the way we have it on graphs is we have them as two separate things. We have MRR and then we have net revenue, which includes that transaction amount. I would say if I were in your shoes and applying and the transaction fees are relatively stable, like they're not super spiky, I would lump all of that into the MRR number, So if you have 5,000 MRR and about 2,500, 3,000 of transaction, I'd put that 7,500 in the MRR and then just call it out and let us know, hey, it's about a 1/3 to 2/3 breakdown. Because while transaction revenue isn't MRR, we've seen, again, we have enough companies now that a lot of them have pretty dang stable and growing transaction fees. And so they're not one-time fees, even though they might appear to be so. All right, our last question. We have 1 minute. It's from Ryan McElroy. Assuming my SaaS tool catches traction fast during launch, how do I protect the business from another company with more money and knowledge from stealing my market share during the launch phase? You outmarket them, sir. You outmarket them. Yep, you build a great product. You use your advantages and advantages against a big funded competitor. Usually is that you can move faster. Sometimes it's that you can be closer to your customer. Sometimes it's you can just outlive them, because we like to say they're cockroach companies, right, Tracy? That they just survive for a long time. And your big funded competitor who raised 20 million, well, they have 18 months to burn through that. And if you just outlast 18 months, the odds are pretty good you might be able to acquire their assets for pennies on the dollar, as I jokingly like to say. So
great answer. I love
great
it.
Marketing wins. Yep. that is him. Thank you so much for coming. You can apply for TinySeed at tinyseed.com/apply.
It goes straight to the application. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And you can reach any of us on Twitter. We are Tracy Makes. Yep, there they are. At Rob Walling, at Tracy Makes, at Alex McQuaid. Easy ones to remember. Our DMs are open. And please
send
do
us an
follow
email
us and
at
connect.
hello@tinyseed.com.
Yes.
Go straight to Alex. Yeah.
Mhm.
We're all like, we love answering questions. This is really fun doing this. Definitely reach
Seriously.
out. We'd like to talk to you.
Any question at all, don't hesitate to send it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for coming. And we will see you in applications, or we will see you next time.